Hey everyone, today we're talking about how perimenopausal and menopausal women can lose weight as easily as they did in their 20s. Now, obviously weight gain is incredibly common for women entering menopause, but today I'm going to show you why that doesn't have to be the case for you. And I know you're probably thinking this 30-year-old guy has no idea what he's talking about and he's never going to know what I'm going through. And you're right, I'll never experience it myself. But I have been able to help hundreds of perimenopausal and menopausal women who are dealing with the exact same things as you. And these are women who were struggling to lose weight and were told by their doctors, everything looks normal. This is just a part of menopause. Maybe you should try weight loss medications. And so they're left feeling like the only plausible solution is like hormone replacement therapy or medications like Ozempic. But it's not, and there is a better way. And first, we need to understand why weight gain even happens during menopause and perimenopause, because it is super common. And so most women think that estrogen dominance or estrogen depletion alone is the reason why they're gaining weight. But that's just one small piece of the puzzle. And we'll discuss here in a bit how you can naturally improve your reproductive hormones during menopause and perimenopause. But if weight gain alone was solely being driven by menopausal hormonal changes, then every woman going through menopause would gain weight. And that isn't the case, because I know of plenty of women who went through menopause and didn't gain weight, and I'm sure you do as well. I'm sure you can name a few who went through perimenopause and menopause and nothing seemed to change about their body. And so what was different about them? So many people may think, well, it's just a combination of genetics and menopause. But that's also not true, because there are plenty of studies that look at identical twins and show that their genetics do not determine their body composition, and they can drastically differ from twin to twin, even though they have the exact same genetics. So let's dive into what the real problems actually might be. First, imagine that your hormones are like this conductor of an orchestra. They keep the systems and processes in your body organized and well synced. And estrogen is one of those hormones. So in your 20s and 30s, your hormones are functioning the way they should. Your metabolism, your appetite, your sleep patterns, your muscle mass, your recovery, they're all in harmony and in sync together. But when you start to lose those hormones, when you start to get estrogen depleted during perimenopause and menopause, the conductor steps away and the orchestra gets out of tune and starts playing sort of in any direction that it wants to. And your body needs to readjust and resync so that your internal systems can function properly again, which is 100% possible during menopause. I don't want you to think that it's not possible just because you are losing those hormones, that the conductor is stepping away and it's gone forever. You can fix this. And often we aren't doing the right things specifically to recalibrate our body, so we end up in this dysfunctional mess. And as a result, I see tons of perimenopausal and menopausal women become insulin resistant, have stress and cortisol issues, sleep issues, they develop gut issues often, and generally they have a weak metabolism, and so it's really easy for them to gain weight and really tough for them to lose it. So those issues, more than estrogen and progesterone loss, are what are causing the weight gain. The good news is that those are problems you can fix, regardless of your estrogen and progesterone levels. Right? You can't stop your body from being depleted of estrogen and progesterone during menopause, but you can fix these other things that are driving weight gain as a result of it. And you can do it without hormone replacement therapy or weight loss medications as well, which isn't really solving the problem anyway. So let's walk through the steps that you can take to start losing weight during menopause, regardless of your situation. And the first thing that we need to do is optimize for muscle. Okay, we have to optimize for muscle, because after the age of 30, the average person loses 3 to 8% of their muscle mass per decade. So when you are 40 compared to when you're 30, the average person has lost 3 to 8% of muscle by that time. And muscle is the main mediator of metabolism, so it needs to be optimized for. If you get to 50 years old and you've lost 15% of your muscle mass since 30, you're going to have a really difficult time losing weight, because your muscle spends a lot of energy just to be maintained and takes a lot of calories, right, just to maintain it. And so we have to be optimizing for muscle during that time. That said, you can still gain muscle in your 40s and 50s and 60s if you feel like, maybe you've already lost that muscle. Maybe it's too late. It's not. You still can gain muscle back and start to develop a stronger metabolism because of it. But to do that, we've got to stop restrictive dieting and doing tons of cardio for weight loss. The focus has to be on slow resistance training that builds muscle. Okay? And in my experience, I find that for most women, 3 to 4 days per week of structured resistance training with daily walking and some low intensity cardio, if they want, is the answer as far as training goes, as far as exercise goes, to make sure that you are maximizing your muscle mass and maximizing your metabolism. That said, HIIT and cardio, like high intensity training and cardio, are not bad. It's just that resistance training needs to be the primary focus if you are struggling with menopausal weight gain. Okay? When you add muscle, you will lose fat. That is known. But what will also happen is you will improve insulin sensitivity, which brings us to step number 2, is that we have to improve your insulin sensitivity during perimenopause and menopause. Because often during these times of our life, we become insulin resistant. Basically, insulin is a hormone that controls our blood sugar, and it makes sure that the sugar in your blood does not get stored as body fat. Instead, it gets used for energy. And when you become insulin resistant, blood sugar ends up being converted into body fat more easily. And you also end up with these energy deficits because we're not able to use the blood sugar, the sugar in our blood, for energy, right? And so you might feel tired all the time, and you might end up with more body fat, specifically around the midsection as well. So how do you start to improve your insulin sensitivity? Well, we already talked about adding muscle and going for walks. Those are main things that will help, but there are a few other things you can do as well. The first thing is adding more fiber-rich foods to your diet. So fiber slows down the digestion of carbohydrates and sugar, helping you control your blood sugar spikes, right? So we don't want your blood sugar to spike really high. We want it to kind of stay level throughout the day. It will spike after you eat, but we want to control those peaks and valleys. And so some high fiber foods that you might want to consider adding are things like split peas, avocados, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and butternut squash. Those are some ones that come to mind that are high in fiber and kind of will help you with insulin signaling. Next, you'll also want to make sure that you're getting enough omega-3s and vitamin D, which can both improve insulin sensitivity as well. Another reason perimenopausal and menopausal women become insulin resistant, though, has nothing to do with food. It actually has to do with poor sleep and high stress. And when we enter these new stages of life, a lot of times those things happen. We have more stress, and we end up sleeping badly. And especially with the estrogen depletion, we can end up with hot flashes that can affect sleep, and we end up with disturbances. And there have been several studies that show that a lack of sleep and higher stress cause weight gain through a few different ways. But there's one specific study that actually took a group of people, and they sleep deprived them for one night. And after one night, they were already pre-diabetic of being sleep deprived. And when you're pre-diabetic, you're insulin resistant, and you're going to have a much harder time mobilizing body fat and using it for energy. Instead, it's going to get less blood sugar is going to get stored as body fat. And so we've got to optimize our sleep and our stress as well, and for more than just insulin sensitivity, because step 3 is regulating our cortisol. Your cortisol is your stress hormone, and it gets elevated during times of high stress. And sometimes when elevated for too long, it can actually become depleted and we can lose its function. It can be really low, and then we end up with low energy. What we're going to be talking about mostly is high cortisol. And sleep and stress have a massive impact on your cortisol. Now, cortisol is not a bad thing. We actually need cortisol to have energy, alertness, focus. When we're working, when we're trying to be alert during the day, we need cortisol to be elevated. It's important. The problem is when it's elevated for too long, high cortisol can slow digestion, it can decrease metabolism, it can reduce estrogen and progesterone even further, it can cause estrogen dominance, and it can cause insulin resistance, which we've covered some of those things already. And cortisol, alongside with estrogen depletion, tends to cause fat gain specifically around the midsection. So we end up with that belly fat storage, kind of that spare tire kind of look. And this is what most women are experiencing during menopause. So how can we improve our cortisol? Well, the most obvious answer is reducing stress, but that's usually a pretty tough task, right? We can't always just, live a stress-free life, and that's really not the goal anyway, because it is my belief that if you lived a completely stress-free life, you probably wouldn't be super satisfied with what you're doing and have a ton of purpose. And so we can't really reduce some of those stressors sometimes, right? And that's not necessarily the goal either. However, we can make your body more resilient to stress and make sure that your body responds better to stress. And doing that requires you to optimize your immune system, optimize your inflammatory markers, your gut health, and then practice doing some hard things. So for example, one massive benefit of something like cold exposure, where you are doing a cold plunge, taking a cold shower, is that it enhances your ability to handle stress, okay? And if you can handle more stress, then your body will physiologically respond to it better, and you won't have the negative effects of high stress because your body will be able to handle it better. We also use CO2 tolerance stress testing with our clients to understand what their tolerance for stress actually is internally, right? We can use a breath test to actually determine what that is, and then game plan as far as like what type of breath work in biohacking or lifestyle habits we can actually include to improve our ability to handle stress, okay? And that makes a massive, massive difference on our cortisol and in turn, our belly fat storage. Nutritionally, the best way to improve cortisol is by getting enough high quality protein like lean meats, fish, eggs, magnesium-rich food like fatty fish and avocado and leafy greens, getting enough B vitamins, and then getting enough vitamin C as well. So those 4 things: lean protein, magnesium, vitamin Bs, there's many of them, and then vitamin C. Really, really critical to making sure that we have optimal adrenal function, which controls our cortisol. Okay. And as far as exercise goes, we see HIIT training typically being a negative here, like super high intensity training, just increasing the amount of cortisol and further exacerbating cortisol issues. And so we talked about training before. Exercise, we want to do mostly strength training and some low intensity cardio like walking, right? On to step 4. We covered 3 things already. The 4th thing is optimizing your gut health. So inside the gut, we have what's called the microbiome. It's the microbes that are in your gut, the bacteria, the fungi, the viruses. But a part of that microbiome, a specific part of it, is called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome is a collection of bacteria that actually regulate how much estrogen we have in the body. So the bacteria in the estrobolome produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. Okay? And beta-glucuronidase alters estrogen into its active form in the gut and then allows it to be reabsorbed back into the body. Okay? So it essentially attaches estrogen, makes it active, shuttles it back to the body to be used again. The most common problem here is that when there's too much beta-glucuronidase from an imbalance in the estrobolome, you end up with an overgrowth of the bacteria that make beta-glucuronidase. And so we have too much beta-glucuronidase. And that puts too much estrogen back into the body, and we end up with estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance has been linked to bloating, acne, low sex drive, headaches, hot flashes, and of course, weight gain. So what can you do to start to improve your gut health? Well, you can follow me on Instagram. I have tons of content there. You can listen to some of my YouTube videos that I have around gut health. I have a lot of YouTube videos around gut health that you can dive deeper into. So I would go look there. But in general, you want to be eating a low inflammatory diet that is high in fiber and protein to support the good microbes in your gut. And of course, the gut microbiome is incredibly complex. So I always do comprehensive diagnostics to my clients, to figure out what the right course of action would be for them. Like, what are the deficits that are actually happening in their gut? Because there are so many things that could be happening inside the gut. And what you would do to fix it really depends. Some people need probiotics. Some people need to kill off a bacterial overgrowth. Some people have leaky gut. And so what you would do actually depends on what the issue that you have inside of the gut. Okay. So healing your gut is step number 4. So as a recap, number 1, optimize for muscle. Number 2, improve insulin sensitivity. Number 3, control cortisol and regulate cortisol and stress. And number 4, support your microbiome and your estrobolome so that you can have optimal estrogen function. So if you do those 4 things, you're going to have no problem losing weight and feeling awesome during perimenopause and menopause. I know it, I'm sure of it. And if you just do those 4 things, you will be able to lose weight and you will be able to feel better and have more energy. So if you're serious about balancing hormones, healing your gut, losing weight, and you want to find answers as to why you have been struggling individually and what your individual deficits might be, then you can click the link in the description and book in for a free root cause analysis call. I'll shoot you over an assessment after you book as well, and we'll go over on the call, review it together, and dive deeper to figure out what might be preventing you from making progress at this point. Because truthfully, everyone is a little bit different. So hit the link below. It's 100% free, no cost at all, and I'll be in touch shortly. And if you're not ready yet, no worries. I hope you found this video helpful anyways, and I'll catch you in the next one.